Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. The Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverwoods is meeting virtually tonight under exceptions to the Open Meetings Act on the basis of Governor Pritzker's executive orders concerning the COVID emergency, and my determination as village president that it is not practical or prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting is being conducted virtually with board members participating through the Zoom platform. One village official is present at Village Hall during this meeting as required by the Open Meetings Act. Public comment may be emailed to the village at the web address shown in the agenda. We will not be using the chat function because it is not captured on the audio recording of the meeting, which is important to our records. So with that, meeting's called to order, and may I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Dickon.
Here.
Trustee Eastman.
Here.
Trustee Haber.
Here.
Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson.
Here.
President Ford.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the board meeting of April 5th, 2022. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and discussion, please. Trustee Jamerson.
I sent this earlier today, but obviously it didn't get, there wasn't enough time to put it in to make the change. But
Right.
on page 8 of the packet, which is page 4 of the minutes, the third paragraph down where it's talking about resident Laura Trevino, I think it's important to note that what in the second line, it says Ms. Trevino noted that there is a park within a half mile of Riverwoods. That's not what she said. She said there's a park within a half mile of every home in Riverwoods. And my comment, which was in the next paragraph, I wanted to note that was said before when we talked about this 3 years ago now, and it's incorrect. There is not a park within a half mile of every house in Riverwoods. So I don't know how you put that in there. I know we're not trying to do exact quotes, but I think it's important to note that the information, the fact that was put out there by a resident was incorrect, and it was corrected. So I don't know how you deal with that in the minutes, but that's what
Okay.
needs to be. It needs to be changed.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or suggestions for change? Okay. Would you like to amend the motion saying that the minutes are approved with changes to affect? You're muted. You need to unmute. Yeah.
Sorry, I will make that, I will amend the motion with the changes that I made.
I
Okay,
agree. It's a second.
okay. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Next order of business is the approval of bills. Do I see a motion for the approval of bills?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the bills as presented?
I have some questions.
Absolutely. Trustee Haber, please.
So under the Gaywald Hamilton bill, there's a couple that are like one's Thornton's, one's Federal Life, one's SSA 22. And I'm just wondering if this is getting properly like charged against the bonds. for those developments. Thornton's, Federal Life, and then
Yes,
there's SSA.
yeah,
The,
I see where you're talking. The coding is, the coding is subtly different.
Where we have bonds, for the two that we did last summer, we haven't really done the final project breakdown. There's still, in some cases, some restoration work. I don't know that we've closed out the actual construction contracts. But before we close all of that out, we'll pay or reimburse the general fund if that's happened. But we have proceeds available to pay those expenses, and it's just a question of kind of doing that final accounting.
I'm just wondering who's tracking that and how it gets tracked, because these are the kinds of things that slip through the cracks and then never get deducted from the bonds.
Trustee Jamerson.
I think trustee Haber's question is, are we charging Thornton's and Federal Life? And it's not a bond, it's a deposit,
Or the deposit, right?
right?
It's the TIF. It's the TIF.
We will be recovering from Thornton's and from, we haven't established an escrow with Federal Life, I don't think yet. We've had a couple of meetings with them, but Thornton's, we have an escrow at the title company, and we will at the closing true up all the bills that they've been paying us, what we've been paying that are due.
I do have one more question about the Gewalt Hamilton. The largest item on there is miscellaneous. You know how I feel about miscellaneous buckets.
Yes.
So I think that when the largest item by far is miscellaneous, it probably needs to be broken down better.
Okay.
I'm not going to say we shouldn't pay it, but I think in the future we should get that. And maybe our accounting system doesn't allow for that, but we should make
Well,
more buckets.
It would be with, it should be with the bills that have come through, but your point is well taken. And what we'll do is, as we've done before, is we'll find out the answer to your question and then we'll share that with the trustees.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on the bills? Trustee Clayton?
I don't remember what page it's on, but item number 26, Badger, having to do with the meters. It's a charge for $952 for software maintenance. And I'm getting a little confused about what with regard to the overall meters project and the replacement project, what software are we maintaining? And it seems to me like it's a pretty high charge if these are the new meters for software meetings.
Okay, let me get an answer to your question there.
Thank
And
you.
maybe it could be a question of miscoding.
My guess is that it's probably a yearly maintenance fee for the software, because we talked about that originally, as I remember. And so it's probably not, if that's what it is, it's probably not out of line for a yearly maintenance fee. But
I'll find out. So we have three, you'll get a little bit more detail on three issues: the Gewalt Hamilton bill, the miscellaneous, with respect to the miscellaneous bill, and then we'll look up the Badger and get back to you with that detail. Are there any other questions? Okay, then no other questions. Roll call, please.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson,
aye.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
and Trustee Eastman.
Is he there? He was there.
I think he
He-
left the building.
Did he leave the building?
Okay, I'll just mark him NA.
Okay. He abstains.
That's right.
All right, next item on the agenda, the Treasurer and Finance Committee report. Trustee Clayton, please.
The statements for the first quarter are in the packet. There's a little bit of an explanation in front of the statements about what's going on in the general fund. We are running a little bit behind budget at this particular point, but better than last year, solely due to shortfalls in revenue. And at this particular point, expenditures are being managed well below budget. The only department that's ahead of revenue is administration. Ahead of budget in revenue is administration, and that's pretty much due to better than expected sales tax receipts. So that's pretty much what I have to say. If there's any questions.
Sales tax receipts, that's a pleasant surprise. Are there any questions or discussion on the budget or the year-to-date financials? Okay, seeing none, we can move forward. Director of Community Services report. I spoke to our director, and what would like me to report to you is that we have had on the hazardous tree topic that we've had really good response, and that Lucas has completed everyone who has signed up with Lucas. They will be moving then now to the village property to cut somewhere about, he said 50, and I'm like, that seems like a lot. So I'm not really, we'll see what happens. There might be a lot of trimming, and I'm taking it and it's all loaded into one. But at any rate, it's doing, we're doing very well with that. The Urban Forest Management, who is working with us on this project, they are reviewing the lists and crossing some of those lists to make sure that the homes that have not responded or haven't, we've not heard from, or Lucas hasn't heard from, cross them with the vacant home list and with the vacation list. But they will be driving through the village to check on all those trees that they have marked and see if they've been taken care of. So what I'm saying is that we're zeroing in on our second notice, and that will be sent out, I would hope, within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll move forward that way. So again, we've had some very good response on that. And that was all that he had to report for us this evening. Are there any questions I can pass along? Okie dokie, seeing none. We'll move on to the consultants report. Village Attorney Hoover, please.
Hello. Well, good news. I talked to the people who want to put in the video gaming store. We had wondered what was going on with that. I talked to Tony Meston. I think you recall he was one of the people that presented for Baby Vegas, and he said that they are now going full steam ahead. They had a delay because the landlord was talking to a potential tenant for a space that would have been adjacent, and then they were thinking about how to adjust the common wall and I think the landlord was trying to combine the work to be more efficient, if I understand it correctly. And I'm hearing this only from the perspective of Baby Vegas. It was not a delay that they were looking for, not one that they welcomed necessarily, but they were waiting for that to play out. As it turned out, I guess that tenant, whatever it was, is not going in the space, or it's not going to affect the build out for Baby Vegas. So as I understand it, they now are going to be working to finalizing their lease and coming in for a liquor license, he thought in the next week or so, as soon as they finalize their lease, in which case they intend to apply for the liquor license and get the permit stuff in and do their build out as quickly as they can. So they are intending to go forward from what they've told me. Let's see. We know that Thornton's engineering plans have been submitted to the county. Technically, the county says we need 15 days to review, and that would have been just yesterday. So I don't know if they've gotten through that yet to review. We said we would try and reach out to the county if it was getting delayed. But those materials are sitting at Lake County right now for review. And I forwarded some information to Russ. He's not here tonight, but presumably he will have what he needs, or he'll ask them for what he needs on the building itself. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for our village attorney? Okay, moving forward then, village engineers report.
Good evening. With the fun spring we've had numerous drainage calls that we've gone out to. 1900 and 1925 Kelvin had sinkholes around the basin. This basin's actually within the village's property. It's the access way to that park area that's behind 1900 Kelvin. So Cannon Construction was out there today, repaired the infiltration that was happening within the structure itself and repaired the sinkholes and restored them up. So therefore, hopefully everything is now safe within the village's right of way. 2050 Clendon, there was an issue by the ditch on Duffy. Duffy is Lake County, so we directed her to just call out to the county because they're the ones that would have to take over any type of drainage blockage or what's going on with the drainage ditch along Duffy. 2627 Gemini, they had a drainage issue. It's private, so we directed them to contact the HOA to discuss how to resolve the drainage issue. And then 2890 Cherokee, there was a black culvert due to some boulders, decorative boulders that were around the culvert. Cannon went out to move the boulders and did some cleaning. If it builds up again, obviously they will be contacting the homeowner to do cleaning of the culverts, since that is within the ordinance for the homeowner's responsibility. We received a call regarding water quality at 1040 Portwine. They said they had about an iodine taste. We tested the chlorine coming out of the reservoir that was within the allowable range. We explained that, you know, some people are more sensitive to that taste than others, the chlorine taste. You can get a carbon filter if you really wanted to try to dilute that taste. And the homeowner was okay with our resolution. And then water service at 50 or 591 Eagle Court, they were saying they were getting a high water bill when not home. So we've been in contact with the daughter, left some messages and just waiting for contact back regarding that issue. We've had a couple plan reviews. We had one Meredith, and then we just got 2887 Blackthorn for a new home. And then with that, I will move into operations here. And
Oh, excuse me a minute.
okay.
Hang on just a minute. Trustee Jamerson, you have
Can I
a,
interrupt just for a
comment?
second? Carissa,
Sure.
can we
Go
go
ahead.
back? I have two questions. The first question is about the Boulder culvert,
Mhm.
the one you mentioned. Is that a public street or a private street?
Cherokee is a public.
Okay, and then the 2887 Blackthorn,
Mhm.
there's actually two lots there that have the same address.
Okay.
There was one house on both of them, and I'm wondering, is that house going on one lot, two lots?
That one just got sent to me today. So when
I
I
got you.
take a look at it, I can give you more information. We just
So
did it today.
if it's not straddling the lot line, like the old house was, we probably should look at getting two addresses for those two lots, because they are two separate PIN numbers. And I know that because they're in our homeowners association.
interesting.
So they both have the same address, but they're two distinct properties. So, and they were sold as two separate lots. So if it's one house on both lots, then it's probably fine. But if it's on one lot or the other, we really should see what it takes to get a second address. Because the driveway is actually on Greenbrier, not on Blackthorn.
Okay.
So it's confusing. I mean, I would expect that police and fire probably know about that, but it would be confusing to somebody that didn't realize that it's on Greenbrier, because there's no driveway on Blackthorn.
Noted. I will take a look once I open up the file.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
I think you were on operations.
Yep, moving on to operations. So I'm just reading the report from our operations crew. The new control system is online and working with the additional programming. We responded to the water main break on Brentwood property. They were able to isolate the leak and did not affect the service to the building. It's a private line, and Brentwood would need to make a repair. They have Cannon Construction working on miscellaneous hydrant repairs from the master list and the flushing form from last year. I believe we discussed that a couple times, just to reiterate. The meter program, 26 residential accounts with the 1 inch meters. The chief contacted 9 of these residents, and HBK is going to go call and schedule. The contact through HBK, Linda, has been sick. So Ashley, another lady from HBK, is going to take over and try to make those phone calls. There's 12 residential accounts with 1.5 meters that are waiting on parts. They were ordered on April 4th. The lead times of like 8 to 10 weeks. There's 2 residential accounts that are with 2 inch meters. At least 1 meter will need to be changed because it won't accept the new register at the endpoint. And then 24 commercial accounts, 10 which are discovered, and the parts are in order, and 6 are manually read, and 8 are new meters. So that's the water system and dealing with the meters. The sewer collection system, there's rehab going on at Briarwood and Chicory Lift Station from the Lake County Public Works to confirm the date on that rehab. Also rehab work going on at Trillium Lift Station, and again, waiting for Lake County Public Works on their starting date. And then we've been working with HC Stringer on the preventive maintenance plan for the low pressure sewer system. But we're trying to kind of clean up as many loose ends as possible before going on with new. And then 745 Port Wine got a new E1 system installed. They're the ones that they are part of an SSA, but they never connected. So that was done over the last couple of weeks. And that is what I have for operations and engineering.
Trustee Haber?
So Clarissa, on the southwest corner of Hoffman and Port Wine, ComEd was there, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago when it was really, really wet, and they dug up that corner. I don't know why they dug up that corner, but then they just left it, and it's a mess.
Okay.
So I don't know what has to be done to kind of do the restoration of that, if they're ever coming back. But it was ComEd trucks that were out there the morning when I drove by.
Noted. I will definitely we'll contact our direct contact with ComEd, make sure they come out and get it all cleaned up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for letting me know.
Are there any other questions for our village engineer? Okay, terrific. Our village ecologist is with us, and we've got a report for you, and it's in the packet. So if we can follow along that way, I think that might work.
So do you want me
Hey,
to
go ahead.
share my screen, Chris, or?
You know, that might be a good idea. That way everybody can stay in the same place at the same time. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, God. Here we go. Oops. Okay. Can you do it?
Yeah, let me know if everyone can see that.
I don't know what I've done.
Chris, what you're doing is sharing your screen as opposed to allowing him to share his screen.
Okay. I thought,
You need to go where that little camera is on the bottom there, the blue camera.
yeah,
Click on
that's what I
that.
did.
That'll get you.
That's what I did.
oh,
Meeting controls. I've screwed up. Okay, stop share. Let's just stop that for a minute. Oh,
Now we got his screen.
Everyone can see the nice pretty home over there in the woods. All right.
I don't know if I'll miss this or not.
So everyone can see this now, right? We're good to go.
Yes.
As far as I know.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And thanks, Chris. So yes, everyone, I think I know everyone pretty much on the call here. And yeah, I still work for the village. Actually, this is going on 7 years now. So yeah, I've been asked to put together sort of a recap as to sort of the state of the woodlands right now. And a little bit about like the cost share programs and what's been going on the past couple of years. So I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to try to keep this concise. I know you guys like to keep these meetings short. So the first slide I'm going to go into, and this is just a recap slide. I've given like presentations to the board in the past, I know, with some of this stuff, but this is just a recap. So Riverwoods is complex. I think I've kind of mentioned that in the past, and there are, you might drive through Riverwoods and think all the woodlands look the same, but there are actually many different types of woodlands. And if you can see my cursor, I mean, it goes from floodplain woodlands to mesic oak woodlands to the purple, which is dry mesic oak woodlands, and it tapers out into sort of some savanna that's been preserved within Thorngate. The gray areas are just completely developed. There's like nothing there from historic times, but just kind of recapping as you move away from the river. Oh, and I should mention, because one of the most important features of Riverwoods and why we have water everywhere is the green, which is scattered everywhere. And that's that northern flatwoods community, which is it's a wet woodland community that's wet in the spring and fall, dries up in the summer. And that's why I think a lot of people are calling about water right now. And in a month from now, it usually dries up. But just a recap on the woodlands. And so I was asked to see if I can my cursor, there it is. So this is a map that shows sort of like the different communities that you saw from the previous map, but a little bit deeper into the ecological health. So let's start with bullet point 1, which is the mesic oak woodlands. That's the red area on the map. So there are 3 different shades of each color that you're looking at. The darker the shade, the higher the quality of that type of woodland. As the shade gets lighter, it's less quality or not as good ecological quality. So basically this mesic oak woodland in red, this is where it's the highest quality. And then the rest of it generally is in average quality. And then there's a spot where it's kind of less than average, or there's been some disturbance in the past. The dry mesic oak woodlands, which again are a little bit higher and drier, have different species, that's the purple. So this darker purple is where it's a bit higher, the highest quality. This sort of medium range purple is sort of average quality. And as you move out kind of on the outskirts here where there's the development's more intense and a lot of houses are there that kind of cleared the woodlands historically, that's where mainly you've just got some trees left and not much left of woodland. The floodplain woodlands, the third bullet point here, is down by the river, obviously. It's a little bit harder to make out the difference in the colors here, but the darkest areas again are the higher quality. But generally speaking, I mean, you've got, this is all developed, and most of this, I think lot 1 is down here along the floodplain. Not a lot of houses down here, so it's generally, of all the different types of woodlands in Riverwoods, it's the lowest quality, but that's common along this floodplain area that gets inundated very differently than it did historically. So it sees a lot of stress. The last point or area to look at is Thorngate. So obviously it's built out, but the little remnant pieces that are left in there of savanna are actually in pretty good condition. And that's because I believe they hire McGinty, who comes out and does controlled burns and manages their woodlands. So that's sort of like a general overview of the different types of woodlands, and you can see the different health. Very, very scattered. And I didn't mention the flatwoods, actually. So the flatwoods, most of them are in average but degrading condition. And that's because buckthorn likes wetter conditions. And it's probably the biggest problem we're having with the flatwoods, again, the green areas on the map. So that is just a general overview. And you guys can ask questions at the end here. I'm going to try to get through this, and then you can digest it and ask me whatever you want. For those that don't remember, back in 2018, the board passed a 10-year management and restoration plan for all the village-owned lots. And so I have a table here. And by the way, so there's 35 acres of village-owned lots. That's the Chianti lots, Village Hall in the north lot, Rivenburg, and then Woodland Preserve by the police station. These are actually, even though it's a 10-year approved plan, each year of the plan is contracted out separately to Res, which is the company I work for. And so you can see down here, this is the table that kind of lays it all out. So we did all the major like invasive species removal up in the front here in 2018. And then into 2019, we started doing some more canopy thinning. So most of the work was done in 2018 and 19, and now we're into 2021 and 22 through 29, which is more just the maintenance phase. Something to note here is the interseeding, which we had 30 or 40,000. We thought everything was going to need to be reseeded to be restored. After we took out a lot of the invasive species, particularly at the Chianti lots, it responded unbelievably. So we didn't have to do any interseeding. So we basically just took that out of the budget. One thing to note, and Chris, you may have got copied from Brad, who runs our contracting division. We were supposed to burn this spring, and we've cut some burn breaks in and stuff around the police station. Bruce, you may have seen us out there, but if it doesn't dry out enough, we're not going to be able to burn this spring, and we'll just burn in the fall, just so everyone knows. But basically, yeah, we're into sort of the end of the, keep losing my cursor, there it is, the end of the table, the 22 through 29, where it's just the maintenance phase now, and the costs stay down because everything's essentially been restored. Couple pictures here just so you can see the Chianti lots. This used to be just all buckthorn for those that have seen it. This was taken in like early May, so it looks, the vegetation's kind of short, but it has responded incredibly. There's oak regeneration going on. I would say this is probably, in my opinion, the highest quality ecological system in the village is the Chianti lots. And Woodland Preserve is looking good. We've run a couple burns through there in the past 5 years. It looks fine for what it is. The Village Hall looks fine. There's been some oak death on Village Hall more than a lot of other lots, but I'll talk about that in a second. And then the Rivenburg lots also look great. There are actually some endangered species on the Chianti lot and Rivenburg lot, just in case anyone wanted to know. There are some sedges and some other like kind of uncommon plants that are found in both of those sites. So I'm sure everyone has noticed, and if you haven't noticed, you haven't been looking up at the trees. We're having a massive die-off of oaks in the last few years. And there was a lot going on a few years ago about it. And I had meetings with forest preserve districts and all kinds of other entities trying to figure this out. And actually the person that helped me figure this out was more than anyone was Evan Shore with Bartlett. He used to be with Davey. You guys probably know him. He went out and on their own dime, just to figure out what was going on, he started testing some of these trees because there were a lot of arborists in the village saying it's oak wilt, and they were basically trying to charge the residents big money to treat for oak wilt. And myself and Evan did not think that's what the problem was. So as it turns out, in 2019 and 2020 were two of the wettest springs on record, and it didn't dry out for a long time. And what happened is mostly in that red zone on the map in the purple, the mesic and the dry mesic oak woodland, those are dominated by red oak and white oak. And they need it to dry out after it gets really wet in the spring, and that didn't happen. So what happened is the root systems basically rotted on the trees, on white oak and red oak. And what you're seeing on the top photo is white oak. And what happens with white oak is the first year or two after it goes through that stress, it gets what's called antlers. And the tree may rebound from this point, but it could die. But it takes a couple of years. This bottom picture is a red oak. And what we found with those, and in reading the literature, we read the same thing, is those tended to die that same summer. So we had the wet spring 2019 and 20, and then it would dry out in the summer, and basically all the leaves would just turn brown on the tree, and the tree would die. So that's what's going on with the oaks. There's nothing anyone could have done about it. There is a bright side to this, believe it or not. So swamp white oak, not white oak, but swamp white oak, which is more common in the northern flatwoods. With the wetter conditions, what I'm seeing, especially in Ryerson, because I pull in there quite a bit and check it out, is we're getting oak regeneration in the areas that used to have white oak and red oak. We're getting swamp white oak regeneration. So when these white oak and these swamp and these red oak die, they leave canopy gaps. And that's where light comes in and you get oak regeneration. So although it may be human induced because of climate change to some extent, it is sort of nature's odd way of kind of reestablishing oaks. Oaks need a lot of sunlight when they're young. And again, the death of some of these large trees, it's unfortunate for the people that these are in their lots, but it does, for an ecosystem-wide look at things, does create a benefit for oak regeneration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the second half of this is the cost share programs. There's been a little talk lately about the cost share programs and the match and what's going on with that. So I thought I would share exactly what's going on. It is an incentive program, as everyone knows, and basically it's sort of this program created years ago before I started to sort of help maintain the character of Riverwoods. When I started, Bruce, as you know, we went through a lot of changes and revised everything, and Cheryl was involved multiple times over multiple years to get this thing to work really well, which it does. There are basically 7 cost share programs that the village has. All of them are meant to sort of help maintain and restore the health of woodlands. And the canopy, find my cursor again, it keeps disappearing on me. There's a canopy tree removal program. That's to remove invasive species that are competing with the oaks in the canopy. That has a 50% match up to $4,000. The invasive shrub removal program, mostly for removal of buckthorn, but there are other species involved, that also has a 50% match up to $4,000. The garlic mustard program, believe it or not, I have not had a single person apply for that. And I'll talk about why. I haven't actually seen a lot where I've recommended that somebody apply for it. So it has a 50% up to 2,000 match, but there hasn't been a single application for it in 6 years. Number 4 here, the native tree and shrub planting program is a 50% match up to 2,000. A newer program that wasn't there historically, which is incredibly essential, is this native seeding and planting program. That's 50% up to 2,000. And I'll stop real quickly there because this program, next to basically like the invasive shrub removal program, is probably the most important. So if you've been up and down Portwine recently near Village Hall, you've seen a couple lots that look like a disaster right now. That's just part of ecological restoration. So what those residents did is they removed invasive shrubs, mostly buckthorn, that had become so dense, and shaded out everything that it was bare dirt underneath. Those same residents, I've approved them for the native seeding program. So now that the buckthorn has been removed, now with enough light coming in, they will go in and reseed the ground layer. And within a couple of years, that will look much better. But I wanted to kind of lay that out because they do look rough the first year after invasive species are taken out. We have a rain garden program. It's not common that people use it, but a few people have. And The last program is the prescribed burning program. And from what I understand, this was not used historically much. And we have a lot of people using it now. I think 10 people this spring are doing controlled burns. Rain Garden has a 4,000 match, prescribed burning a 2,000 match. So I want to clarify something. So it used to be that people would simply go to the village and say, I want to apply for this program. And they were approved and they would do the work, and it was kind of lost. The way the programs have worked in the last 6 years is I actually go out and I do an ecological consultation. So the resident pays $75. I schedule a visit with them. I bring a map like this out to their lot and I mark it up. I walk around the lot and we talk about the woodlands and we talk about the programs and what can be done to restore and maintain the health of the woodlands. So I create a map like this. This is just an example from a property I went to recently, where you can see the colors on the map represent where they're eligible for some of those different programs. In most cases, a resident is only eligible for 1 to 3 programs, maybe 4 at the most. So we have 7 programs, but again, I'm the gatekeeper so that they can only apply for what's needed on the property. And I just want to let everyone know that nobody is allowed to just nilly-willy apply for programs. It's got to be in their report on their map, and I had to have approved that they can apply for it. And just some stuff to look at here. These are like the 4 most common programs used right now. That's the canopy thinning, and that's to thin out, let's say, like sugar maple, so they get more light and to get more of this kind of situation. The invasive shrub removal program, that's probably the most used. And that's to get rid of mostly buckthorn. And everyone knows if you drive through Riverwoods, we still have a lot of buckthorn. I'm going to talk about that briefly here in a little bit. But here's like the ground layer seeding. So this is kind of on the left of what some of those lots look like along Portwine right now. Once they're seeded, these are all perennial plants that are seeded. They take a couple of years to grow, but that's what fills in then the woodland understory. And then once a lot is basically restored and just needs maintenance, that's where prescribed burning comes in. So that's where the long-term maintenance is burning. And that program is basically a resident is allowed to apply every 5 years to do a controlled burn. But I only approve controlled burns when the lot gets to a point where it's ready for that. Otherwise, nobody can do burns unless it's really ready for a burn, because that's the long-term maintenance, just like you see the Forest Preserve District do. Okay, 2 or 3 more slides here. So I wanted to share, so I track all of the cost share program stuff to the nth degree. I'm a very detail oriented person. I have spreadsheets for everything. If anyone wants to go back, Cheryl Chamberlain and I used to, every November, just before I think the budgets were due, we would sit down through all the spreadsheets and come up with the budget for the next year. And that's how it was done in the past. But I'm going to show you, for example, like last year. So in 2021, I did 47 ecological consultations. So that cost is $200 per consultation, which adds up to $5,800. The resident pays $75, the village pays $125. So that's where that number comes from. But then if you look down here at the applications, so here are all the programs, except the ones where nobody applied for them, like garlic mustard. That's not on here. How many residents actually applied for each of those programs? And then how much the village reimbursed for each of those programs. So the village in 2021, for example, spent approximately $34,000 on reimbursements. If you add in the $5,800, you're at like $38,000 that the village basically spent on the cost share programs. But then you got to subtract $4,500 because that's what the permit fees were, because it's $100 permit fee for each application. So essentially the village kind of recoups some of that money with the permit fees. And then so far this year, because actually there's a lot of people have, and I want to I'm going to try to describe this in the best way I can. This thing goes in cycles. If you could compare every single year like I've done, and I've got one to show you on the next slide, it kind of goes up and down each year, and some years are heavy, some years are light, and there's really no explanation for it, other than some work is best done in winter, some is best done in fall, spring, and so you get applications coming in at different times, and a lot of times the applications carry over. So a resident applies, but they don't actually do the work for maybe 6 months because they needed to wait. For example, I've had a lot of people, and that's where I'm at now. So I've already done 11 consultations this year, and the growing season just started. And a lot of these people are saying, I want to remove invasive shrubs and stuff. And I'm trying to tell them, like, well, the best time to do that is winter. One, because the ground is frozen, so you don't disturb the ground layer, and they get cheaper prices from the contractors. And so sometimes, yeah, I'll go out now, but they won't do the work till this coming winter, and then maybe the seeding the following spring. So years overlap as well, and that adds a little bit of confusion. But already this year, we've had 20 people apply. 8 you can see is the tree and shrub planting, and that's because spring is one of the best times to do that. So that's why people are applying now, because spring is probably the best time to plant trees and shrubs. So it's a little bit seasonal. And if you kind of look down here, so yeah, and so you can see, so nobody's actually put the trees in yet because it's still too early, but come May, June, I'll start seeing reimbursements that I'll approve for the native tree and shrub planting. The canopy removal is kind of high because that was done over the winter. So a lot of people are now getting reimbursed right now for the canopy tree removal that was done over the winter. But we're at about 17,000 right now that the village is reimbursed. And the permit fees are around 2,000, again, $100 for every application. Okay, drum roll. So here are all, so I don't have 2015 on here. That's actually the year I started, but that's when everything was being revised and not quite tracked yet. So from 2016 through the end of last year, this is a summary of all of the cost share programs and how much the village reimbursed. So if you look at the prescribed burn program, by the way, the numbers in the front are just the codes. So when I do my billing, I code to these, and that's how it gets separated out. And so it's tracked by the village. So prescribed burning. So you can see through the years, it averages. So over here on the right, the average reimbursement per year is about $3,500 for prescribed burning. And you move down. Oh, so this is kind of out of place here, but these are my consultations. So maybe I should have put this at the top and separate. But that's that $200 per consultation. The resident pays $75, village $125, and I do about 40 to 50 a year. So the average comes out to about 6,000 a year for those. The canopy removal and the native invasive shrub removal are two of the most popular programs. So canopy thinning, village reimburses about 10,000 a year. Invasive shrub removal, and this is kind of skewed. So this is the most popular by far, 24,000 a year, but you got a couple of years in here like 39 and 35, and the rest are 12, 13, 10. So you can see it's cyclical. It's a little bit hard to figure out why sometimes, but that's what I described earlier, is how one year it's this much and the next year it's not even half. Garlic mustard, yeah, you can see I haven't recommended it to anybody because nobody's really had a problem with it. Native tree and shrub planting, that's also a pretty popular program, as well as the native seeding. So both of those are in the 8,000 to 9,000 a year. Rain gardens, we've only had a couple people actually apply and get reimbursed for those in 2017 and 2021. And then, so this is really the number here, the 53,000. So that's about what the village reimburses per year. I think that's high though, because again, it includes my consults, which is $6,000, but you've got an 82 in here and a 66, and everything else is 40, 39. So there's a couple outliers that make it 53. But if you take all the years, that's what the average reimbursement is from the village year. And this last bullet point on the bottom, I put this in here because it sort of tells me how popular the programs are. And how many people are actually doing this. So I have done that previous map I showed you, this one, I've done 278 consults, I think it was, since 2016. The colors on the map just represent the different years they were done. So a different color for each year. But I mean, you can see how much that's filled in and how many people have taken advantage of this. But 118 residents have applied for the invasive shrub removal program since 2016. That's actually kind of remarkable considering, and I wish it would be cool if we could go on a road trip, on a bus tour around the village, because I could point all these out to everyone, because I'm sure I'm the only one that actually knows where all this stuff's taking place. You'd be shocked to know and see how many people have actually done this work. So I hope I didn't go too long there. That's the end of my presentation. I can stop sharing my screen, and then if anyone wants to ask any questions.
Yeah, is there any discussion or any question? Trustee Eastman?
Yeah, Steve, thank you very much. That was actually really informative, and I thought it was really interesting to see the roll up by year and by program, which I hadn't seen before. And it's interesting that there really isn't a discernible pattern amongst, like what years are going to be high years and what years are going to be low years, which makes it a little difficult for budgeting purposes. But it was really interesting to see what, residents were taking advantage of and what they weren't.
Trustee
Thank you,
Jamerson?
Andy.
Trustee Jamerson, did you have a comment?
Well, I just have a comment in general about the village. I know that there still seems to be a lot of people that are violating our woodland ordinance in various places. And I don't know how we, as a village, try to enforce that. I mean, I know when somebody does complain, Steve goes out and checks it. But I don't know that we're going to have an answer. I know we won't have an answer tonight, but I think at some point we have to try and figure out how to keep people from violating the ordinance. Probably half of the time they don't know the ordinance exists, especially the newer residents. And we've had a lot of them in the last, 2 years. So just a comment. We don't need to talk about it a lot, but just a comment.
Yeah, Rick, it's right. I think that's probably the hardest thing we're going to have to deal with. I can tell you that at this point, probably half, if not more, of my consultations in the last 2 years have all been new residents. So that's a good thing. But you're still going to get those. It's so Carissa was talking about the application that came in today on Blackthorn there, Rick. And I glanced at it quickly. And so, Rick, so when I review plan sets for the village, there's a sheet that I review and it has all the tree and all the woodland stuff on it. They didn't even submit it. They didn't even know they needed to, and they're going to be shocked when they find out how much work that's going to take for them. They didn't survey the trees correctly. They're going to have to spend thousands of dollars before I can review that. But this is an example of, just not knowing or not wanting to know. I'm not sure. I think it goes both ways. I think there's a lot of people that just don't know, right? And I don't know my village's ordinances, right? It's the same kind of thing.
Enforcement is a difficult topic, and particularly when you can't walk into somebody's backyard, to see what's going on. And, I guess my question to you on that end is, we have these ecological maps that you've done for us. And how often should those be done? Should those be done every 2 to 3 years so we can see what's going on? And, does that make
so
sense?
Chris, you asked me about that in fall, and I told you I was going to think about it, and I have.
Okay.
I based on what I'm seeing, So it costs a lot of money I think it cost the village, I'm just gonna throw it out there because I know it was a $25,000 exercise to
Okay,
do that. I mean, we had to fly the village with a plane with
Yeah,
a special
yeah,
camera. I
yeah.
mean, I would say every 10 to 15 or 20 years before I would update those. It's just too much work for the little gain you're gonna get out of it, I think.
The other factor is that we have these maps, and when people take away part of the woodland, Steve makes a notation on the map, oh, this part of the woodland was taken, so if they could have taken 20% and they already took some away, now they can only take 15%. So that's reflected in notes. And so if you create another set of maps, you have to transfer all those notes. I think that might be also a burden.
Yeah, it's just going to be a massive exercise I just don't think there's enough gain or positives in doing it sooner than every 10 years.
Trustee
to be-
Jamerson, did you have a comment?
Just a quick comment, Steve, or a question. In general, and I know you went through it a little bit in your presentation, but in general, do you think that since we started these programs, the health of Riverwoods, the ecology has gotten better, even if it's incrementally?
So
And it could be a short answer.
You
Doesn't
just
have to be a
asked the
long
golden
answer.
question. And Bruce Hubert's laughing because I already discussed. So Rick, it takes years and years and years for it to be assessed. I mean, it took 150 years to get to where it's at now with human disturbance, and it could take another 50 to 100 years, and no joke, before it can all kind of come back if the village keeps at it. So, I mean, if I were to say yes or no, I'd say yes to a small degree, but it's only been 6 years.
Thank you.
Trustee Dickon?
Question, and I know there isn't going to be a perfect answer for this, specific to the invasive shrub program. I know it's among the most popular cost share programs that residents are applying for. So I know that in the perfect world, we'd like to get rid of all the buckthorn in Riverwoods. How far away are we from that goal?
A long ways. Yeah, so I would say we're 10% of the way there.
0.1%?
About 10%, I
Oh,
would say.
10%.
Yeah, just driving around and seeing it, yeah, like maybe 10%.
Okay, and are you coming across situations where residents have applied for invasive shrub removal programs and then never done any maintenance and it all grows back?
Yeah, so that happens. And so that is why, so that's exactly why I create the maps. And what you don't see, and Bruce may remember this, it's written into specifically the invasive shrub removal program that if it's bad enough and I don't see anything growing on the ground layer, it becomes a requirement to apply for the seeding program if you're going to remove buckthorn, because yes, it'll all just be bare dirt. If you don't do anything, it'll come right back. So we actually wrote that in. And then usually what I try to sell residents is, look, okay, when you do the seeding, it's going to be about 3 years before it gets established. Then that's when you burn. But yes, I tell them you're probably going to need whoever's doing your work. Tallgrass does a lot of work, to come out one time a year and just stay on top of the buckthorn resprouts. But yes, I've had a handful of people. In fact, I had one last week where they had me back out. They had done nothing and they didn't do the seeding. And I told them you can't reapply. You just can't. You blew your
that's where
chance, basically.
That's exactly where I was going, where there's really no way where we can enforce the maintenance part of it, even after the village reimburses the resident for the program.
Yeah, and so I try to sell it hard when I go, like, this is not just a one-off, because I can show every lot I go to, remove the buckthorn, well, everyone around you still has it. So it's until everyone picks away at it, you've always got the seed source.
Thanks, Steve.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. I think that was really a good presentation and very worthwhile. And I think it brings it home a little bit, both, in terms of the health of the woodlands, but the financial part of the program as
No
well.
problem. Yeah, thank you, Nat. But yeah, it's probably overdue a little bit. I used to give a presentation or two to the board every year and it's probably been.
And I know you've done it for homeowners associations. So if people are members of homeowners associations, it might be a good idea at the annual meeting if you contact Steve and see if that can't be part of your meeting as well.
And I'll see you guys on May 14th, whoever is going to the
Yeah.
plant sale. So I'll be
We're
there.
giving out 75 oak saplings. So that's another plus. First come, first serve. Okay, well, thank you, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Moving on, Plan Commission report, please, Chairman Brightcroft.
The Plan Commission did not meet in April, and so I have nothing to report on that, and I have nothing to update what Bruce has already said.
Any questions? Okay, moving on, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Chairman Greditor.
Nothing to report. Nothing is happening. It's very peaceful.
Peaceful is a good word. Speaking of peaceful, Chief, do you have a report?
It's been peaceful. Police activity is in the board packet and I don't have anything else.
Any questions for our chief? Okay, moving on, my turn. First item you see there is a proposal to evaluate the Deerfield Road and Riverwoods Road pathways. I wanted to report on the status of that. I know we had discussed that. And the status is really that I've asked Trustee Hollander to lead that effort. And because he has been involved in the Deerfield Road, we're talking about looking at both of those paths in terms of repair, maintenance, replacement. I've also asked our village engineer, Carissa Smith, to take a look at what it would cost. Just give us some good cost estimates so we had a ballpark of what we were looking at. And so when we get ready to come back to the board with some suggestions or status reports, we would have some numbers behind that. Are there any questions on that? Next item under my comments are to those of you who have not filed your statement of economic interest. Those are due May 1st, and that's coming up. It's not hard to do. It doesn't take a long time unless you own stock in Gewalt or something. There's not an issue. There should not be an issue. It's intended to get at conflicts of interest. So please, please, please fill those out. I don't think I had anything else for you this evening, thankfully. So are there any visitors that wish to address the board on items that are not on the new business section? Are there any communications, emails, or anything, Chief?
No.
Oh,
just me.
Katie, I'm sorry.
No.
Well, he's right here, so, okay. By the time I get that, we'll be back. All right, new business. First item under new business is the approval of project for the maintenance and replacement of paths in the Flatwoods Heritage Center. And I left the cost to exceed blank because we did just get our engineer's report, and you've got two options there for the paths around Village Hall. And that's what we'll be talking about first. Recall that the paths around Village Hall were part of the design with the OLSLAD grant, one to the east and one to the west. The one to the west morphed into two paths, and we will not have, when I say two paths, there was one shorter path and shorter loop, and then there was a larger loop. The larger loop, we walk that, it's just, it's very wet. And I don't believe that was not the path that was on the original design. So we will not be talking about that second larger path. It is the shorter path that, if you recall, at Village Hall, it takes a short loop from the edge of the building on the north side and goes out by a bench, not too far out, and then comes back to the building on the west side. On the east side, it's by the shelter. And right now, those are wood chips, and they're in disarray and are just not easy to pass for somebody who is less abled or somebody who might be pushing a stroller, or for certain, somebody who needs to use a wheelchair. So I'm going to ask Carissa if she'll talk about the two options that we have there. And I hope that you all got these in your, just late this afternoon. So if I could turn this over to Carissa to talk about the options, and then we can discuss.
Sure. So we gave two options for the Village Hall pathways. The decorative stone was the requested granite stone, that the gray color stone you see around the perimeter of Village Hall. And then the second option was to do your limestone screening, which is more of the brown color that you kind of see in the central location from Village Hall, or if you've been to Forest Reserves, you've seen that's what they use for all their pathways. So realistically, the difference in cost really just comes down to the cost of that final course. So you have your granite versus your limestone. Obviously, granite is a little bit more expensive than your limestone. So it's about a $24,000 difference. And in the cost, you can see you have your construction costs. We always put a contingency in there, and then potential soft costs, just to give a budgetary number. And then the last cost estimate we've supplied is dealing with the pathway over by the demonstration center. I know it says police station on there, but that area to create a new path, and that one came in about 21. Once you add your contingency, a little bit of soft costs, you're just under 30,000 to construct that pathway to the demonstration center.
Okay, I'm going to ask that the board keep those two items separate, and we take the paths around Village Hall separate from the demonstration center. So having said that, Attorney Hubbard, please.
Just one thing to maybe clarify on the difference between the decorative stone and the limestone on the path by the village. Did Steve Zimmerman stay with us, or is he might have left? I asked Steve if there was a reason, for the sake of the trees and the forest, that we had used the crushed granite as opposed to the limestone. And he went back and looked at notes and told me that in his view, it doesn't matter, that the woods would be fine, and that it's not, I don't know if it was purely a decorative decision, or if, there was, I do remember discussions years ago in the village about, where people would put in, we had gravel streets, and they were concerned about the use of limestone and the health of oak trees. I think the feeling was that the amount used here and the size of the paths and everything just wouldn't have a material effect on anything. So although he's not here to say it, when I asked him the question, he said that you could make the decision based on cost and appearance, but he didn't think you needed to be concerned about the health of the trees and preferring one of the other.
Thank you for that. Trustee Jamerson.
If my memory serves me correct, when we did planning for the campus area, the material that they used was supposedly more ADA friendly than the limestone screenings. And it may also have been less maintenance requirement. There was a reason why we spent more money. It wasn't just to make them look good. That was not the reason. And I don't know if Carissa can maybe chime in on that or not, but there was a reason why we used the more expensive product.
So granite is a more a hard material than your limestone. Limestone actually is a little bit more absorbent and malleable. So I could see why you use the granite for more of, it's less maintenance because it holds more. It creates a more sturdy material on the top than the limestone will. And so that's where I can see the use of it for the structurability and the longevity. But for ADA, technically a definition for an ADA route is a non-slip material surface. So your limestone and your granite are non-slip, so they kind of fall in the same bucket regarding that definition. But granite is a more coarse material. It locks a little bit better and it upholds structurally a little bit better than limestone.
Okay, thanks.
Trustee Haber?
I mean, I just did a Google search earlier about, whether to use limestone or granite for hardscape. I have no idea, whether this Google search is accurate or not. But it basically says that, what I learned is that it's basically aesthetics. That granite and limestone are both going to last a very, very, very long time. But that limestone might be susceptible to acid rain. I'm not sure that we have that issue here or not. But other than that, they're both extremely sturdy, and it's just a matter of aesthetics, whether you want gray from the granite or the, brown color from the limestone. So I don't know whether that is consistent with what you think, Clarissa, but that's kind of what I learned.
Yeah, we see limestone a lot in the, everyone always thinks limestone, they think of forest preserves because they use it all the time. So you just have to make sure you keep that limestone compacted, because if it starts getting it saturated, it tends to float a little bit easier. It's a lighter, more porous stone. So as long as you keep the maintenance and you keep it compacted, it serves the same basis of the granite screenings. That's the only thing we've really kind of seen with the limestone is you don't really keep up with the maintenance and it starts getting displaced and gets kind of tilled up. It moves easier with runoff across it than other materials.
I guess because we have a tendency not to do maintenance, we should probably go with the one that is more maintenance free.
Yeah. Excellent point, by the way. Trustee Clayton?
Recognizing that both materials are ADA approved, I could just say in my personal experience that the decomposed granite is a far superior material for running a wheelchair over than limestone is. That's what the decomposed granite is, my understanding, is what the Botanic Garden uses. And you can tool around that without a problem, but sometimes the limestone, if it's not fully compacted, will cause wheels to spin and other issues. So between the two, if I had to choose, it would be my druthers to do the decomposed granite. And I'll move that we do that with a cost not to exceed $76,000.
Is there a second?
Wait, $76,000? What are you looking at?
If you look at.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong page. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm not screen sharing. You're going to have to. Yeah. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Trustee Dickon?
What's the life expectancy of both materials? How long do we expect for these baths to last us? How soon are we going to need to redo them?
Well, the current granite ones are what, 4 or 5 years old, 4 years old since they built the village hall.
Yeah. Figure.
As long as you keep up with your maintenance, and we actually had this discussion when we were walking the paths, the granite, current granite pathways, they're still upholding really good. You can tell the top layer starting to segregate a little bit, and that's again just happening with, it's just naturally what happens with the screenings, no matter which material you go with. So once in a while you have someone come out, just the top, re-roll it, and then you're good. I mean, you're anywhere probably 10, 15 years. But as long as you keep the maintenance, it's really that top course. Because like you're stating is, as long as you compact it, the decomposed granite will kind of compact onto itself and creating that layer. You're really then just adjusting the top course, which obviously as everyone sees and everyone walks or wheels across. As long as you keep up with that, it should just kind of be a continuous, but they don't come out with a definite, oh, it's for sure a 50-year maintenance or a 50-year guarantee or anything like that. You'll never really get that in the screens just because of the nature of the material.
Sure. So how much are we budgeting for annual maintenance then? On top of the $75,000 expense?
Well, I don't even know if it sounds like annual maintenance. We haven't done anything, I can pretty much guarantee that, since it's been laid. So,
It's typically 3 to 5 years to come and they just coat it. You know, they put a top coating on it, re-roll it, and just to make sure that surface stays.
what would your estimate be for that, for a maintenance? Is there something we can point to in the,
I much rather just get a definite answer from a supplier of what the cost is before throwing out there, but I mean, obviously it's not gonna be $75,000, I can tell you that. So,
I guess I'm just trying to understand how long the $75,000 is gonna stretch out.
and it could be
How-
longer than
how-
5 years. It's like any type of other maintenance. You can kind of start seeing it start deteriorating, and then okay, the next season we should just put the just coat back on it, and that's them just literally coming out and putting about an inch on it and rolling it. It's nothing, they're not digging anything, they're just reapplying a top dressing to it and rolling it.
Okay.
Could I get a clarification from you, Clarissa? Is it that we didn't do maintenance that's now resulting in us having to spend $75,000 after only 5 years? Is that the problem? Or would we wind up having to redo this every 5 years? Because we had granite pathways, right?
These are different granite pathways.
yeah,
Are they?
let's be clear about what this is covering. This is,
Okay.
what we're talking about is replacing the wood chipped path.
Okay,
Wood chip path that's out there now that is, when we walked it's not easy to walk an able person. There's very
so
little
how,
chance.
how are our granite paths? How
The
have they-
granite paths are in fine shape. You can
Okay.
walk, they are in fine shape. They're in fine shape. They've withstood the whole, they don't even get puddles on them when I see them outside my window here.
Okay,
It's porous,
what-
but it stays. The wood
Okay.
chipped is what we're talking about replacing. Trustee Clayton?
If it's relevant to anybody, there's $220,000 in the capital plan for pathways. Just point of information.
And this 75 is for the path to the west of the building and the path to the east of the building. Is it true, right, Chris? Okay,
Yes.
so that's 2 pathways. So it's quite a lot.
And I would like to clarify, part of this is to disconnect that outer ring. Basically, the contractor is just going to scoop away the mulch chippings that connect it and just let nature grow back into it. So people, when they walk up to it, they don't see 2 caps anymore. It will be disconnected. They'll be able to see the wood chips, but it should start deteriorating and start getting back into just the natural ground covering while we still keep the inner ring as a defined path.
And it shouldn't be hard for it to go back to nature. Last fall, we had like a mushroom farm on one part of it. It was really quite interesting. There any other discussion? Seeing none and hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is going to be a good addition. The second item is the approval of a project for the installation of a path from the parking area by the police department building to the demonstration center. And that would, you have another piece in there. So it would be at a cost not to exceed $27,473. for $28,000. And we have talked about this before. There is no good way to get from the parking lot to the demonstration center. And not being able to use it, not being able to drive there and park and easily get to the demonstration center. Seems to me that number one, it's limiting in terms of who can use that path. And secondly, I think it limits participation generally. So we brought this to you again. Trustee Haber?
So I'll make the motion just so that we can have discussion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion just so we can have the discussion.
And now can we have discussion?
Have discussion.
I'll go first.
You go first.
Okay. I'm not convinced that we should be spending $27,000 for this path because I'm not convinced that anyone is using this area. And I think that we should really be considering something completely different for that property, for that so-called demonstration center. I think to throw more money into the demonstration center, which is not being utilized, there's nothing to draw people there. A path is not going to draw people to something that there's no reason to go to. I just don't see why we would continue to spend money on what has turned out to be, you know, for lack of a better word, a boondoggle. There's just no reason for it. I mean, there's no demand there. And so I for one, don't want to spend $27,000 additional dollars to create a pathway to nowhere. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Trustee Jamerson?
I'm not going to argue against that, but I would like to know what you think we might be able to use that for. I'm
I
just
have
curious.
no idea.
Because, as you know, the reason there's no parking lot there is because Lake County will not allow us to put a curb cut anywhere on either one of the two roads that it borders. So I'm not saying I disagree with your logic. I just don't know what we would put there other than weeds and
Yeah, or maybe just, you know, let it grow
If
back
plantings.
to woodlands.
plantings. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
plantings.
Native plantings.
Yeah.
And there are people, I do see people there. It's not droves. I will agree that there aren't droves of people there, but I do see people riding through there on their bicycles. I see people walking their dogs through there. Not tons. I agree. There aren't tons of them, but I do see people there. So I'm not sure that that being said, I'm not sure that a path from the police station is going to change the amount of use. So
Okay, Trustee Dickon?
Yeah, have we had complaints from residents wanting for the path to be there or wanting to have better access to the area?
I haven't heard any.
I mean, is this something that we could just maybe put out there and just get some feedback? And I'm not saying a full blown out survey, but
Trustee Clayton?
There have been, by my count, 4 community events there in the last 3 years. And in each case, the process of trying to utilize the facility, carrying in tables and getting people to park in Anil's parking lot and getting them across the street with added police assistance and so on and so forth, is a detriment, is an impediment to use of the space.
I have a question for you, Mike. Were those 4 activities that the village held there, were they particular to being like a presentation of that area, or were they just utilizing that space for some other reason? And if it was just utilizing the space for another reason,
I get that, yeah.
could it be part of now the campus plan? You know, could the activity be moved to the campus plan where we're trying to really promote that more now?
Yep. About 50% each.
Okay.
There was one of the ones that was the Arts and Crafts project that was a very well attended kids activity, was specifically designed for the Native flowers and everything to gather all that stuff and to do something that was specific to the space. But certainly with the shelter, the majority of the activity could have been held at the shelter as well.
Thanks.
Is there any other discussion? Chairman Brightcroft, sorry.
It's almost a chicken and egg kind of situation. I think that if you had the path and you had programs which could be tailored to the area, you would get more people using it. So just because it hasn't been used doesn't mean it wouldn't be used.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to comment? Any comments from the public?
Say call the question.
Okay.
What exactly is the motion? Just so I-
Motion, the motion is to approve.
Approve up to 28,000, is that the idea?
Correct.
Any further discussion? Okay, you called the, technically you called the question, so now we have to vote, right? So, right? Okay, all right. Roll call, please.
Trustee Haber,
No.
trustee Hollander,
No.
trustee Jamerson,
Nay.
trustee Clayton,
Just to make it, I'll say aye.
trustee Dickon,
Nay.
trustee Eastman.
Nay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry, trustee Eastman, was that a yay or a nay?
That was a nay. No.
Thank you.
did you two almost agree again? I couldn't tell. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. And I'm hoping that in short order, we'll be able to bring another couple of paths to you for your review.
I would like to
Trustee
put
Haber.
on, I would like to put on the agenda, though, at some point, some additional discussions about that area. I'm like trustee Jamerson indicated, I don't really know what we should
Yeah.
do, there, if we should do anything there. But it may be time to kind of revisit that whole spot and see whether there is something that we should be thinking about that might be more beneficial to the entire community.
Good point. Trustee Hollander?
Yeah, we looked into the spot to add further those individual garden plots because there were only 12 and it appeared that there was a greater interest. But Steve Zimmerman said that there's not enough sunlight there to put the extra plots there. So, there was some attempt to try to do something with that land.
Okay, good point. Will do. At
I-
some
I-
point, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea whether this makes any sense at all, and I don't know if the spot is big enough, but something that is really very popular in a lot of communities right now is disc golf. And I don't know whether or not that spot would be big enough for a disc golf course. But if it was, that might be something that would actually drive people to that area and then may require a path from the police department to get people there. But, I think that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of, something that would really draw people to the spot to exercise, to do something.
Yoga classes, right? I'm kidding, but I think that at some point, a committee of the whole would be nice to get together to just freely talk about things without having to worry about motions and so forth. Trustee Jamerson, did you have?
Just real quick, when trustee Haber mentioned exercise, or somebody did, right along Waukegan Road in Northbrook, I don't know, I guess it's north of Techney Road. There is a little wooded area on the west side of the road that actually has, if you look in there are exercise, places spaced out in those woods. So it might be a possibility.
Idea, okay. Duly noted. All right, moving on with the agenda. We don't have any old business this evening. I'm unclear if we have an item that should go to executive session at this time.
It was a personnel issue and I sent an email to Bruce and to you. I sent a response to Bruce. This is something we cannot discuss in executive session or should not discuss in executive session.
Well, the reasons for going into executive session are limited under the Open Meetings Act. And if I mention the matter, then it's probably not what Trustee Hollander is intending, but my reading of the Open Meetings Act is that the topic that he had brought up with me before the meeting is not one that we can go into executive session for.
Okay, thank you.
Right, perhaps an agenda item for a future meeting.
Right.
Okay. All right. Are there any comments from the board? General comments about something? Yes, Trustee Haber.
You're muted, Mike.
You're muted.
Earlier tonight, we talked about the revenue being down from court fines of about $5,000 a month, or about $60,000 a year. And I'm wondering if there is any correlation or any thoughts that we should be giving to what we're paying our prosecutor, because I recall that when we talked about the prosecutor's salary, we talked about the court fines and how much we were getting from that, which would be offsetting some of the salary. So I presume anecdotally that it means that she's doing less, because if there's less fines, I presume there's less actions that are being brought. And so I'm just wondering, Bruce, you probably know more about this than any of us, but I'm wondering whether or not we need to look at that again and look at that contract and determine whether we should be making any adjustments.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay. Trustee Clayton.
I just wanted to mention that last night there was a very nice gathering in Northfield to honor Pat Glenn.
Oh,
And it was extremely well attended. And they were giving out T-shirts and there was a lot of drinking going on. I don't know if this was an Irish thing or not. I don't know. But there was one thing I wanted to ask Carissa, though, was they were collecting donations for something and I didn't get over to the place where they were collecting those donations. So if there's something that is being done with regard to gathering donations, if you could email that out to the board, I would appreciate it.
Right, so what we've actually reached out to Harvard High School, because that's where Pat went to high school. And we have set up a scholarship fund, an annual scholarship fund for a graduating senior going into college, community college, trade school, continuing their education. And it's actually the highest monetary fund or grant that's available for graduating seniors. Their highest they've had was $2,000, but this is going to be an annual $5,000 that GHA is going to contribute towards the scholarship fund in Pat's honor. So what they were passing around, and I unfortunately wasn't able to be there. I did get a shirt because I ordered them, but they did set this up. And so what you were kind of seeing passed around is basically anyone that wants to contribute towards it. We're still matching our 5,000. That's something that we've set up and we're going to do for as long as GHA is around. And then this is just on top of it. So it's kind of the whipped cream or cherry on top of the sundae. And if you want, we can put something out similar to when you guys do the tree dedication on the 14th. I for sure will be there. And I know that there will be a handful of GHA people present as well. So if it's something they're interested, I'll make sure that we have some sort of collection thing for whoever would like to donate towards the scholarship fund in Pat's honor.
Yep, please forward the information on, and yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So we, just on that matter too, Russ and I spoke with Kirsten and Todd today about tree selection. So it's it's going to be a swamp white oak, and we think probably the best place to put it is in the center circle where there's a lot of light and so on. So that's what we're talking about. And that tree should be planted by the time the cleanup day comes. So we'll just dedicate it on that day. So that's where we're headed. And at the same time, we're giving out oak saplings. So just kind of tying that all together. I don't think I had anything else. Has anybody else got any questions or comments, suggestions? I don't take complaints. I do not gladly take complaints. Okay, then may I see a motion for, oh, by the way, I sincerely doubt that we're going to be meeting virtually in the future. I would be shocked and amazed, but I've been shocked and amazed before. So I will keep in touch with you. The governor's order is supposed to expire, I don't know, in the next week or so. But I would plan on in person next time. But again, I will let you know and I will confirm that. So next meeting is May 3rd. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, no discussion.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
trustee Dickon,
Aye.
trustee Eastman,
Aye.
trustee Haber,
Aye.
trustee Hollander, and trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
And we're done. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.